to the Media Show, everyone. So today we have a special guest, Alan Soon, co-founder of Splice Media, a company that has been at the forefront of reimagining the future of independent media in Asia. And I remember that I first met Alan in 2019 at the AJF program.
Is that right?
Yeah, in Singapore.
Oh my God, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, 6 years ago, actually. Yeah, and since then, I think many media professionals in Mongolia, and including myself, actually, have come to know your work and insights in the journalism future as well. So it's really great to have you here today, and thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for yours. Thank you for putting all this together. This is quite a treat.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say that we are in Taipei during the RightsCon 2025 conference here. And Alan is, very generous of his time. And we're recording here in a studio in Taipei for the media show and for the media professionals in Mongolia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Can we start with your career path, actually? Because I know you, but I've never had a talk about how you started in journalism and how you actually created Splice Media as well.
Well, this is a long journey. Just because I think I've lost count. Honestly, I think it spans about 3 decades now in media. Splice is actually 10 years old. We just turned 10 years about 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure if I ever mentioned that. So it does feel like a long time. My career in journalism actually started out in radio. I was one of the first, I guess, let's see how far back we can push this to with my memory notwithstanding. I started in a radio station in Singapore that was set up by the military. And this was part of my national service in Singapore. So, as you probably know, in Singapore, we have a 2.5-year mandatory military service. And when I started, my service, they said, "Oh, wow, you've got a background in communication. You've got a degree in communication. Can you come and write the news for us?" And that was my start in media. It was a lucky break. Not many people get this opportunity to start, their careers while doing their military service in Singapore. So I had something really special.
Yeah, sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. Of course, I didn't know that. It's quite surprising to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for a while, I was, somewhat embarrassed by it because a lot of my friends were out running in the jungles and, carrying a lot of weight or doing long marches. And here I was writing the news. Not to say it was easy. It was, but yes.
Yeah. And then you, after military service, so you joined the media company as a journalist, or? Yeah,
that's right. So after this radio stint was done, I started in a TV company. Back then it was called the Television Corporation of Singapore, which, when you hear that name, you know how old I am.
Is that a Media Corp? Or?
That's right. It was, this was the old name of Media Corp. Oh. And today most people would know it to be Channel News Asia. So I was one of the first journalists working on that channel when they first launched. So that was an interesting time. I did a couple of years of that one. And, my work in TV would span a lot more years. From there on, I did similar types of work as a producer, as a reporter, as a line producer. So I did a lot of live shows. So that spanned a lot longer than I thought it would, but it did.
So how did you then start Splice Media, actually?
Oh, well, that's a different story because that comes a lot later. It must have been, I forget when that was, but my last corporate job was at Yahoo, and I ran the media operations for Asia at that time, and that was about 6 years at Yahoo. Fantastic, time learning and growing. but also being able to build a fantastic team of people across 6 countries. Might be probably one of the big highlights of my career. But the company started to lose interest in the region soon after that, right? And so my last final year at Yahoo was going around the region and laying off people that I had hired, people that I had groomed and loved, honestly. And so that became a very traumatic experience for me. For a whole year, it was, picking people to lay off, informing them that they were getting laid off, and then trying to do it the right way. So when I was done with that, I was exhausted, emotionally drained, traumatized by the whole experience of working in a big corporation where these types of decisions were made far away, without any sensitivity sometimes, right, for what people are going through. So that was when I decided, okay, I'm done with corporate media. I no longer want to do this big thing anymore. And I was about 41 at that time. And I thought to myself, okay, this is an interesting time of my life because I'm not young and not old. But at the same time, you are getting to the point where if you make a mistake, it's very hard to recover, right? So I thought, all right, I've always wanted to do something on my own. I want to see if I can do this. And so that was when Splice came about.
It's interesting to hear that you have background in radio, television, and online media as well. I think that also helps you maybe running the Splice media with all types of those people in media as well. I think different formats.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the nicest things that I got out of my career was that I was able to understand the workflow that people, that newsrooms had. And that made it easier for me to identify with a lot of people who work in newsrooms, and I have a good idea of what their day is like, and where they struggle, and what the challenges are, and so that made it a bit easier for me to connect with editorial staff.
So how would you define Splice Media by yourself? Because I know Splice Media from the presentations or attended the events as well. And I guess, or like in my understanding, it's such a great network for independent media and journalism in the region. But how would you say?
Yeah, this is something that's baffled my co-founder Rishad and I for a while, just because we've evolved quite a lot over the last 10 years. When we started, it was, we were thinking, okay, is this a consultancy that provides media intelligence to people in the industry? To some extent that was true. But we also did consulting work, and we also did a lot of training work. So over time, the way that we talk about Splice has changed. If I'm on an airplane and someone next to me is asking me, my short answer is, I'm a business consultant in the media field. That's the easiest way to describe it. But I think, when I look at the impact that we have had at Splice, I would say, maybe one of the better ways to define us is that we are community builders in the media space. We look for opportunities to serve every part of that media ecosystem. Whether you're a journalist or a media creator or an entrepreneur or a funder or, an academic in the media sector, we look for opportunities to help you, solve your problems and to work through some of the gaps that exist in the industry. So unfortunately, that's a very long answer.
Long as
but you've been to our events and all that. How would you describe what Splice does in one sentence, if that's possible?
I would say a community, because every time I think I mention about Splice a lot in my working environment, I guess. So people, like my friends, ask me like, so what's Splice actually? You always talk about Splice, or like you're going to that Splice meeting. What is that? And I'm like, Yes, it's a community. It's a community.
Yeah. Well, tell them that one of the co-founders here doesn't quite know how to explain it either.
Yeah, it's a community, and also I would say it's such a great network for a platform for people like media people especially in the independent journalism, I guess I would say. So, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. For us, we want to support media creators, startup founders, anyone who's trying to figure out their journey in this ecosystem. Over the years, we've done a lot of work with media startups, right? And we're big believers that the transformation of this industry that we all care about can only be led by the small, nimble ones, right? Not the big legacy companies that still exist in this space, right? And that's always been the way we would talk about it, about the need to get behind the small media startups that have, big dreams and the agility to build. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been there as a, let's say, business consultant in the media for at least 10 years already, right? And
yeah.
You have some experiences before that as well. So how have you been observing the actually media ecosystem in Asia last years? I'm pretty sure that it has been a lot of things happened. And
I mean, where do I begin, right? That's a really hard one, just because I think there are
3 things maybe.
Okay. Only 3?
Most important 3 things maybe, and then we could go over.
I think I'm trying to figure out here which ones are local and which ones are global, right? So let's talk about the global ones because I think that's easier for everyone to understand and to see. The global changes obviously have been led by the platforms in creating spaces for creators and influencers, right? And that has created a rush of new content and information into widening this ecosystem. So that has been the biggest change that I've seen in that space at the top level. We've also seen a lot of media startups coming online, and these, over the last 10 years, have been aided largely by a lower cost barrier cost to entry, right? So it's made it a lot easier for almost anyone to start something. And people have come together with other journalists, with entrepreneurs to create businesses of their own. So those are the 2 main kind of wider things that we've seen, right? And of course, at the local level, we've had very interesting types of media startups that have come up in response to the political environment and how that has changed. So, for example, Malaysia Kini, which kind of led the way for media startups in Southeast Asia. And of course, Rappler as well, right? These are the 2 big ones that have come out in response to the local politics.
It's interesting to hear that actually media startup as a word, because usually we think about like startup as one in technology, right?
Yeah.
But not in the media.
That's right.
Yeah. How would you also say? What would you say about those startups in media in the Asia as well? Like how they are doing?
Yeah. So I like the word startup, because in my definition of it, a startup is a company that's still trying to figure out its product market fit, right? And I think for anyone who's building in this space, trying to figure out, okay, these are my revenue lines, these are things that will sustain my company, these are things that make it viable, right? So as a startup, you're always trying a new idea, right? Which differentiates us from everyone else that's out there, right? The large institutional ones that are public companies, for example, who do one product and are known for that one product. But when you're a startup, it's quite the opposite. You have the permission to keep trying new things, and you should and you must, right? This is how you get to product market fit, which we can talk a little bit more later on. But that's essentially how I look at the startup space. Everyone is trying. Everyone's figuring out what works for them, given the way the team is set up, given the work that they want to do, given the impact that they want, and of course, given the money that they want to make, right? So everyone's just figuring out how to do it and how to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Especially those startup, like new medias in Mongolia, for example. Many of us are like from legacy media. And creating a startup media and finding a way to monetize is one of the, it's the main problem, I would say. So how would you say, again, like you mentioned about the viable media business. So can we start with like explaining a bit about what is actually the viable media business? What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, the best way to define viable is that the company makes money to pay its staff, right? And that includes the founder. That includes every single person who's on the payroll of that company. Does it make enough money that they can do this for as long as they want? That's how I would consider viable, right? You have a lot of organizations that were built on grant money, and so therefore have always sought out grant money, right? And in a year like this, we see where all that's going, right? Especially in the conference here at RightsCon, you see a lot of people talking about the loss of grant money. The problem with grants is that it doesn't teach you how to sell something to people that people want, need, and therefore will pay for, right? Is it useful to someone? Is it relevant to their lives? Does it create value for them so that they will pay you to do it for them, right? So that's how we would define viability at Splice. And that's what we're most interested in, right? And I think, very often in journalism circles, that question comes up a lot. How do you monetize? And very often what we start to see is that the more you dig deeper into it, you realize that the trouble is that the organization is trying to sell journalism. And that is where the problems begin. For the simple fact that no one wakes up in the morning thinking, I want journalism today. I need journalism today to make decisions, right? So that's where the challenge is. When you go to market and you tell someone, hey, buddy, I'm here to sell you journalism. How about you give me $5 for it every month? Right? That's a very hard sell, because what is journalism? Right? So if you're telling people you need the news, you need to know what's going on, here's some news. Will you pay me for it? And the answer is no. So this is where that challenge is. We have a definition problem in this industry. We don't know what we sell sometimes, right? We say, we make the assumption that because we're journalists, the only thing that we can sell is journalism. And that is where that problem is, because we've become so rigid in the way we're defining it that we forget that this is meant to be something that someone else needs and someone else wants, and therefore will pay us for.
But everyone's need is different.
That's right. And that is the beauty of it, because on the internet, there are, let's say, 1 billion different needs that get served every day, right? And the best example of that is to go on YouTube and you look at all the videos that are out there, all the different channels that are out there. It's a very long tail of interests and needs and wants, right? So somewhere along the line, journalism has deviated from that path, right? We no longer think in terms of what can we do for people. It's very often, this is what we think, and therefore you should know what we think, right? And that's the way we've always positioned it. But you're right. There are so many different needs that are out there. And this is where the internet flourishes. Everything is a niche interest. Everything has a very specific target audience that it goes for, right? You cannot sell stuff on the internet for a mass audience just because the internet is not set up that way. It's not meant to be that way. The internet's great if you have very specific needs and you go on the internet and you find the answers for it. And the challenge is that we've taken all these ideas from mass media, right? From broadcast that I grew up with. and then try to make it all work on the internet. We're saying, I'm going to give you one story and all of you will like it. Right? And that's where the problem is.
Yeah, that was my next question, actually, when you were talking about that. Because let's say many of the kids chose journalism because they want to be famous, respected nationwide, or of course, like I think journalists have lots of egos as well, right?
Sure.
When people clap or when there are lots of viewers, they're satisfied. But like you're advising them to just go for niche market and just a few people. Do you think that could work?
Yeah, I think it already works. You look at all the TikTokers, YouTubers, Instagrammers who are famous in their own circles, right? You already see this to have an impact, right? This is already happening. The problem is that we've always been so arrogant about serving audiences in that way, in that format, right? And then we keep pushing it aside. We keep saying, those Instagrammers, they're not like us journalists. They don't know what they're doing. They're just having fun. And then we realize after some time that, oh my God, the world has changed, and these influencers and creators are influencing the outcome of elections, right? And if you were a politician running for office today, would you go and talk to a newspaper or would you go and talk to a TikToker, right?
We have just seen that.
and we see this all the time, over and over again, right? I think the last 3 years have been pivotal, on that front. A lot of these changes have happened because of the role of creators.
So we have to compete with those creators and Instagrammers.
Exactly. I think, I would say we've been competing with them for a lot longer than we wish to acknowledge, right? The fact is they've been around for a while. We have never believed that they were part of the same information ecosystem until maybe most recently, right?
But do you think journalists can win the influencers and creators? Because in order to compete with them, we have to create contents like them. But what we have done is called news. It has its own format, own shape, and own standard as well. But when we look at those contents, it's not in those standards, and sometimes it can be misinformation or something like that. So how could we compete with that?
Yeah, so I would look at it from a creator's point of view. Do they have the right information to begin with, right? I'm not talking about those who deliberately lie. There are those who do that to make money, right? Somewhere along, that entire class of creators are creators who want to do a good job telling the truth. Now, then the question is, do they have access to the facts? Do they have information that will help them tell that story better? Do they have the data to back it up? Then the question is, what is the opportunity then, for traditional newsrooms, right? I think that kind of answers the question. But very often newsrooms don't want to work with creators because we think they're beneath us, right? But there is a partnership that can be built and must be built because creators know how to reach an audience. They know how to tell stories in a way that engage and do well on these platforms. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is our job to make sure that they have the right facts to tell these stories.
Yeah, sounds like we're in a box shaped by those standards, like news standards. So sounds like we need to go out from that box.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all the politicians that have been elected in the last 2 years, right? That tells you everything. That box has changed a long time ago.
Yeah. One thing interesting from your talk was that you mentioned about the product again. So we've always been talking about news or like news story or feature article or something like that, but we never defined our work as a product.
Yeah.
Yeah. So could you please elaborate more on that?
So I use you can use the word interchangeably, whether you're calling it a product or a service. I think when you say a product, people always think it needs to be something physical that you can touch and hold, right? So I look at a product as something that fits a need that you have, that addresses a need that you have, right? If I wanted to go across the city, I could do it on 2 wheels. I could do it on 4 wheels. So then, what is Uber, right? Or what is Grab? How does that work as a product, right? So you think about it. What is the problem that Uber solves? People want to get across town. They want to get across town efficiently. You don't want to have to explain to the driver where you want to go, how to get there, and all that. And the reason why it's such an incredible thing is that as a product, Uber solves many problems for you. It takes the anxiety out of the equation for you, right? So that's what a product does, right? It solves a problem for you. It makes your life easier. And because it does that, you pay them for it. Another example would be Starbucks. Why do people go to Starbucks?
Love the logo.
Love the logo. Not always the coffee, right?
Yeah.
But people go there because in many ways, you're paying Starbucks to have a place to sit and meet someone that is not at your home or at your office. What they call a third space, right? So those things are also important, right? So when you think of Starbucks as a product, what they're creating is a space for you to have meetings, to hang out with your friends, and all you got to do is just buy a drink, right? So it's not so much about the drink; it is about where to meet someone. When you say to someone, "I'll meet you at the Starbucks at the corner of that street," everyone knows where it is. It's easy enough to get to, right? And you know what to expect. And you can also, extend this thinking to almost every single product out there. Why does someone buy a BMW? Because they need to get across town, but they could get an Uber for that. Yeah. Or they can, just get any Toyota or any Suzuki will do the same thing. What they're looking for is something different, right? A different experience, a different class, a different status. People do the same with Apple products, right? It's a certain status, it's a certain functionality. It does some things really well, but it also puts you in a very different league. Right?
Sounds more like a personalized, right?
Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing is that it speaks to what we all need as humans, right? Sometimes we need validation.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we buy a nice car. Sometimes we need, flexibility, or we need convenience, right? And so we buy someone's service to wash our clothes for us, right? And to iron it for us. So we all have these needs that we pay for. And this is where journalism misses that mark. It doesn't assume, or rather, it doesn't know what people need from it, and therefore cannot create something that's useful for them to pay for.
So we need to think about, while delivering the news, what we can offer for those people who need something. Right?
Yeah, so one way is to avoid calling it news, because no one knows what news means except for us in the newsroom.
So what should we say?
I mean, if you're on TikTok or on YouTube, you don't think of it as news. You just think of it as useful information, right?
Yeah.
When you want to learn something like how do I fix a light switch or a light bulb that has an LED driver or whatever, you go on YouTube to learn how to do this stuff. They don't call it news, but it is useful information that is helpful for you at that moment.
6 years ago, when I was attending your class at the AJF, what I learned was the word user. And this time, I think it could be useful information. Yeah,
I think, the word user is always challenging because it comes from a very tech kind of perspective. Yeah. Another word would be customer, right? If you want to be more direct about that. When you call someone a customer, you're saying, okay, I'm giving you something that you want, and in exchange, you pay me for it. In media, we were always told, go after your audience.
Yeah.
You know, we always call them the audience with a capital A, and of course,
on the other side of the river.
On the other
Just
side.
there, right?
That's right.
We just wave to them.
Yes, exactly. And you know, in traditional media, we always think of them in terms of demographics, right? 18 to 24 years old, mostly female, mostly university educated, mostly doing X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we've always sold media. But the world doesn't work that way. You know, an 18 to 24-year-old female has a multitude of needs and things that they want and don't want and don't like. And that's because they're human, like all of us, right? And so to categorize people in these types of categories, you know, we've developed a very bad habit in media, right? And we just call them audiences. Who cares what they are? Who cares what they want? Let's just call them audience.
Since we talk about product again, is there anything such as product development in the media? And when we do like product development, what shall we aware of, or like what should we think about when we do the product development?
Yeah, I think product development starts with a hunch that you have, and you think, okay, you know, there's this person that I know that has a need for this. How do I find out if this is true? Right? So that's where it begins. It begins with a hunch. Or, you know, it begins with an observation, right? And you think, okay, so you start with a theory, and it could be as simple as, you know, there's a mother who needs to get her child to school on time every morning at 7 a.m. What does she need? Right? Start with that. And then figure out, okay, how does she currently do it? How hard is this for her? How many steps, how many things does she need to do in order for that to happen? And then you come up with your own theory. Can I offer to drive her child every day at the same time? And in doing so, you've removed all of these steps that she had to go through in the past, right? So that becomes a theory that you have. Then you take that to her and you say, hey, I see that this is how you're currently doing it. Why don't I do this for you? In exchange, you pay me a fee. It's as simple as that, right? So you wanna observe what's going on in terms of needs. Figure out how it's currently being done. Figure out how many layers you can remove in terms of friction, and then check and recheck. Like, is this really what you need? Does this solve a problem for you? Right? So like right now, we're sitting in a really nice podcast studio. Somewhere, somehow, someone thought that this was a good business, right? So what problem did it solve for you?
Giving me a nice room for my podcast recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. You're in a different city.
Yeah.
You're meeting other people.
And reliable.
It's reliable, right?
Yeah. That was the main reason, actually.
And that's right. We walked right in, and the guy was like, okay, you sit here, and you put in an SD card.
Yeah.
And everything's set up for you. You don't have to fuss around with microphones and cables.
Or find this room. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We could not have found a room like this at a convention center.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what people pay for. They pay for you to take their problems away. Okay? They pay for you to take their pain away. It's a painkiller in a way, right? They have figured out how to make all of this happen so that you can just come in here and just do this chat, and that's it. So that's product development, right? Thinking, okay, someone needs this. How can I solve this? And then how much money can I make out of it?
So very business mind, which we lack.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of journalists don't like talking about money for some reason.
Yeah.
But the way to think about it is think about it in terms of needs. How do you serve someone, right? How do you take care of someone? How do you take care of someone by removing all the things that cause pain for them, or are challenging for them, or stressful for them, right? The Uber driver that drove us here, took away that pain of us figuring out how to get across town, right? So there are all of these things, and once you start to see the world in that light, everything becomes interesting. Now you see why every single, you walk down the street, why every single shop exists. It exists because someone needs something from them, and they know how to do that. Now, when it comes to newsrooms, that's where that challenge is. We don't know what that is. This might be the only industry in the world that doesn't know what people want from it.
That's true. Yeah.
I think for a long time, for maybe about 50 years, right, with legacy media, the people that we were serving, the customer, right? You think about the customer of the newspaper, was not the reader; it was the advertiser, right? So and that's why we went down this road of selling demographics. We're saying, okay, you want to sell a new car. Okay, that's great because, we have people in their first jobs, 24 years old to 31 years old, and these are the things that they like. And therefore you should advertise on us. And to do that, you pay us money.
One of my friends also asked me to ask you a question about how to rely on like subscription-based model. And especially in Mongolia, we have just 3 million people, and those users are also quite a few, and we don't have that much of popular culture of paying money for journalism, actually. So my friend was like struggling, how can we make money in this situation? And so I'm delivering that question.
Yeah, well, I think,
from you.
The most direct advice I can give is do not sell journalism, do not sell news, right? Do not do that. First of all, figure out again, like what do people need, right, to make good decisions that day. And in doing so, can you save them money? Can you save them time? Can you save them stress? Can you save them pain? Figure out exactly what those things are, and then figure out, is this something that they would pay me to do for them? None of this is about selling news, right?
Yeah.
News is great for being aware of what's going on in the world, and if that's what you want, fine, pay for it. There are a whole bunch of services for that, right? But for most people, they have very specific needs when they wake up in the morning, and they need to get things done that day. Anyone who can solve those needs and understand those needs in a deep way can benefit from it, as an entrepreneur and whatnot, right? So that's where I would start. Don't try to sell news. Another way I would think about this is, how many people do you really need to consume this product to pay you that money for you to build something that's viable for yourself, right? So there are a few assumptions here. The assumption is, of course, that in a small country, you only need a handful of people who really, really want this thing from you. The assumption is that you can then charge them a reasonably high amount of money to make, enough money to pay yourself as a founder, and then maybe a small team. And if that's your dream, that's fine. That's great, right? You don't need. This is why. You and I come from small countries.
Yeah.
So we have that, right? And it's not about your total addressable market from that sense. You're not trying to reach every single person. You're trying to solve problems for a very specific group. Because when you talk about population size like that, right? You're taking into account young children, little babies, old people, and all that, right? You don't need all of that to build a viable business. You need to know who these people are, how much to charge them, and how many of these people do you need to make your financial situation viable.
Market analysis.
Yeah, that's right. We often think that we need all of these to make something, but we don't. We're not in the factory business in that sense, right? We're not trying to make sausages.
Yeah, but I think paying for useful information is, I think, a culture as well. I think Starbucks, people just say that, oh, you have your coffee at home. Why you go to the coffee shops, right? So just like that, I think there are people who still think paying for media or content creators is such a nonsense or something like that. So I think just like those like startups or other services, I think we should build that culture. So do you agree with that? And well, let's say, can you say like how long does it take to create that culture in a community?
I'm sure that culture already exists, right? And the reason why I say this is that in every country, in every culture, in every civilization, people pay people to do certain things for them. Someone to cook your food, right? Someone to wash your clothes, someone to drive you around. So these are three very basic things. You also pay someone to teach you. You also pay someone to clean your house. We already have these types of things in our lives every single day, right? And we don't even think about it. We assume that, of course, why wouldn't I pay someone to do this, you know? And sure, you can make coffee at home, but you're not going to invite a stranger over for a business meeting at home.
Yeah. So let's talk about some challenges, actually, the media faces in Asia. I have a few serious questions.
Yeah, okay,
now.
let's get really serious now.
Yeah. Challenges that Asian media are facing, or like Asian journalists facing. I know you work closely, not closely, I don't know, but I know that people share their challenges and experiences in the network as well. So from someone who is running this network, I'm sure that you've observed some of the challenges and experiences media are facing, and how we can show some solidarity. Like in this room, I think during the Splice media event and here at the RightsCon as well, many people are mentioning about the collaborative efforts and like sticking together in this era of like disinformation and misinformation.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one to answer because there are a lot of different parts to it. I think misinformation, disinformation will always be there. Because of the nature of the platforms themselves, right? I think the algorithm on these social platforms are always at odds with the values of journalism, because they're not there to bump up things that are factual. They're there to bump up things that have caused an emotion, right? Have triggered an emotion. So it's an emotional response to what's going on in the world, for better or for worse. So I think that we need to learn to accept that this is just the way it is. Now, what can we do to work around that and to understand that better? And I think that the question that when it comes to news, at least, right, is to really understand what is our news diet every day. How many of us, would just waste all that time just flipping through, scrolling through social media? What do you get out of it? It's like going to McDonald's every day, and it doesn't make you feel any better, right? So I will look at it from that perspective. But also to answer the question around where these gaps are in these organizations, I think a lot of them still struggle with understanding how to hold on to journalistic principles and yet not be in journalism. Right? Very different ideas there. And that's proving really, really difficult, right? Because the challenge with journalism is that journalists always believe that journalism is what people want to pay for. And that's where that struggle is. And I think, for a lot of these organizations, trying to figure out what that's like, what that sweet spot is like, and how to make that change happen is really, really hard. Understanding what people need from you and what they would pay you for is very hard.
Yeah, you just mentioned about platforms again.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to that part. I've seen, sorry, I'm just asking a totally different thing.
No, that's fine.
I've seen quite a lot of media outlets that are totally based on social media. For example, we know in Mongolia, for example, Instagram-based or like social media-based media outlets there. But recently I've heard that, you cannot just rely on a certain platform because it's not you, it's out there, the other company, right? So what would you say about that, actually?
Yeah, the challenge with social media is that you never know what the next flick of your thumb will bring up.
Yeah.
Right? Which also tells you a really important point, which is intention. There is no control over intention in that sense. Right? So you don't know when you're going to come up in someone's feed. You don't know why you came up in someone's feed. This is the challenge for a lot of publishers, right? So, when you look at all of these impressions, for example, impressions are just impressions. You don't know why someone saw it or why your other friend hasn't seen it or didn't come across it, right?
Algorithms, right?
Yeah, that's right. So
we don't know how does it work.
Well, we know how it works. We just don't know why someone would have stumbled on us or not, right? So it needs to capture someone's attention, to own someone's attention. You have to be highly specific, and you have to be highly intentional, right? When you do something, you want someone to respond in a certain way, then you know that it's working. The problem with being on these platforms is that there's only so much you know how to control. Right? Maybe you have a nice thumbnail. Okay. Maybe your colors are brighter. But you don't really know what are the other things that you can do to make sure that someone actually sees it. And when someone sees it, you don't know why they saw it. Did they go out looking for facts about the upcoming election? And do people even go to Instagram, for example, to look for these types of things, right? So you will never be able to sharpen your product thinking because you don't know cause and effect. There's no cause and effect, right? There's no saying, okay, I did this and therefore I got this. You don't know at all.
Really sounds like the medium is the message.
Always is.
Yeah. The thumbnail actually really impacts.
Yeah.
Yeah, the viewership.
That's right. Right. And
what you wear in the video.
Yeah.
And all those settings and color, light, right?
Yeah. And it's really hard to figure out why someone clicked on it to begin with. Why did they come down? Like, okay, maybe the thumbnail was great, but it doesn't tell you what that person wanted, right? Did they want to know, who are the candidates for next week's election, right? You have no idea. And then you tell them, oh, link it's in the bio, right?
Yeah.
And if they really cared about it, would they go look for? I don't know. It's really hard to tell, right? And that's a problem with building something on an algorithm like that. You can never tell cause and effect. You never know if you're doing it right.
Yeah. Going back to the serious question again, from my friend again. So yeah, she's an investigative journalist in Mongolia, and faced quite a lot of online harassment or like attacks on social media platforms as well. And she was asking that like how we should deal with those problems. Sometimes it's very difficult to continue, like move on, right? So journalists, like how should we deal with those kind of
I feel horrible for her. I think anyone who's getting trolled on the internet and who faces abuse on the internet like that, that's a really, really tough spot to be in. So big heart out to her. It's I think if you're an investigative journalist, you got to know exactly who you want to get your information out to. Because putting it out on social media openly for everyone to see invites all sorts of nonsense, right? Sometimes the change that you want to see can only be done in very small, specific circles. Sometimes change can only come if you do it quietly. Yeah, not everything needs to be done out in the open, right? Because in this space of the internet, you're going to be attracting a lot of people who just want to put you down. And if it's not them, it's going to be their bots who do it, right? Which is even worse, to get trolled by a bot and that ruining your day.
One last question is also the media is actually the target from those politicians or like everyone in the society these days, especially in the political landscape. Like everyone's calling out media as a fake, lies, all those things.
Well, you can't win that battle, right? You can't stop someone from doing that. The only thing that you can really do is to make sure that your reporting is factual. It's as solid as you can make it. If there are disclosures to be made, make those disclosures. Explain how you got, the information, how you're using it, how you're reading it. You're never going to find everyone supporting what you say and what you think. It's just the way people are, right? And people are even worse when they can conceal their identities online, right? So there's always going to be that. You will always find politicians who do this stuff. There's just no getting around it. just do your work, do it as best as you can. You're never going to satisfy all of them, right? But also, I think, ask yourself, is this really the best way to change society? If that's your goal as a journalist, what is it that you want to change? Is this really the best way of doing it? Are there other ways that you can do this?
Have you seen, just an interesting question, have you seen any troll activities related to Splice Media?
There may have been. I try not to look at it. But also, the interesting thing about Splice Media is that, we serve a very specific community, right? And we're on first name basis with a lot of people. So they're not anonymous to us. That's one. Second, we don't flood the space outside of our own community, right? We try to talk to people who are in it. There's no need for us to try to change the world, right? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't serve our needs either. So the level of trolling that we get is probably small or nothing. Either we're too small to worry about, or I like to think we speak to our users, our members, and so we have that relationship, and our accountability is to them, right? We don't have to be seen to be doing this by everyone in the world, and too many people.
I was just interested in, if you had some experiences, how would you react to that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think very very often if I'm posting something on LinkedIn, for example, talking about some of the things that we've been talking about here. I always get some kind of pushback from someone who's been a journalist, and Alan, you don't understand this. How is the world going to function without journalism? That kind of stuff. I wouldn't call it trolling. Some people would call me naive, or not having an enlightened view on this stuff, which is fine. I don't need to change everybody, right? I just need to do something that has the impact that I'm looking for, and thankfully I do see it in the Splice community.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, and I would like to give you the last minutes about if you have anything to say to media professionals in Mongolia.
Well, let's see.
Have you been to Mongolia?
I have.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I had a great time there.
When was that?
It must have been 2005.
2005.
It was October. It was cold.
20 years ago.
Yeah. And snow started to fall. I remember that. I was in UB. I had a few really quite interesting, kind of insights from that trip. There was a Louis Vuitton store, which apparently is no longer there.
Yeah.
Right. I think that mall is managed by a Singaporean company or something, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
I don't know. That I might have been mistaken. But I remember walking around and just kind of, just being incredibly surprised by everything I saw. And it's not like I had a preconceived notion of what was there and what wasn't there, but to go there and just to see, the history being told and how it unfolded, culminating at that time in a Louis Vuitton store, and the number of Hummers on the street, the number of Hummers that were just abandoned as well on the street, the use of the US dollar, all of these things, got me really interested in.
Sounds very luxury, Louis Vuitton and Hummer.
Oh, there was a lot of that, right? I think that this is also the first generation of a lot of people who started driving big cars for the first time, and it was because it was a US dollar cash economy. If you were working the mines, this is how you would spend it, right? And then not knowing where to get gas from, and so you just leave it there until you figure it out. There were all these interesting things that were going on. I think the stock market had just opened. Maybe that was a little bit later, but just walking up and down that main street taught me a lot about how economics works, where Mongolia was going, from that perspective. seeing the difficulties that it had, with Russia on one side and China on the other, and then the Australians.
In the mining sector.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was it for work, or have you seen any people from the media?
No, I was just there because I was curious. I just wanted to go in and see what was out there.
Now it's time to go back.
I think so. I think a lot would have changed.
Yeah. After 20 years,
yeah.
And we have that 400 media outlets waiting for you.
400.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Anything to say for them before you visit?
Focus on needs. The amazing thing is that no matter where you are in the world, people have very, very specific needs. People all want something, right? So in that sense of it, it's a global market, if you think about it that way. If you can figure out what someone needs and how to service them and how to make, build a living off that, I think you're way ahead of anyone else, right? Just do that. Just focus on taking care of people.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Useful information and needs. Today's lesson.
Today's lesson.
Yeah.
All about needs.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kulan.
Thanks.